Hey Reddit. I didn't think I'd ever be posting here, but I need to get this off my chest. I'm Matt, 33 years old, and until recently, I thought I was married to the love of my life, Lisa. We've been together for almost 8 years, married for 5. Life hasn't been perfect, but it's been good, at least I thought so. We live in a cozy little town in Pennsylvania. No kids yet, just our dog, Baxter, who's basically our child. Lisa is an interior designer, and has always been the creative one. I'm more of the practical guy. I work in IT, spend weekends fixing things around the house, and thought we were building something solid together. But over the past few months, something's been off. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Lisa started acting distant, keeping her phone close, brushing off plans for date nights. She'd suddenly have a lot of client emergencies that needed her attention late into the evening, which didn't make much sense to me since she's usually super organized with her work schedule. Then came New Year's Eve. That's when everything started spiraling out of control. Lisa and I had planned to host a small party at our house, just a few close friends, some champagne, and a countdown to midnight. She seemed oddly excited about it, almost hyper. She was texting someone constantly while we were setting up, but when I asked who it was, she said it was her friend Natalie. I didn't think much of it at first, but then Natalie called me during the party to wish us a happy new year. When I casually mentioned that Lisa said she'd been texting her all evening, Natalie laughed and said she hadn't talked to Lisa all day. I brushed it off, not wanting to cause a scene at the party, but it was the first crack in the foundation. There's more to this story, so much more. But I'll stop here for now. What do you think, Reddit? Should I have pressed Lisa about Natalie's comment, or am I overthinking it? So, after that weird New Year's Eve moment with Natalie, something inside me just wouldn't sit right. It's like that gut feeling you get when you know something is wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it. I tried to shake it off, tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, Lisa and I had always been solid. But over the next few days, the little things started piling up. Lisa became glued to her phone. She'd laugh at texts, then immediately tuck it away when I walked into the room. When I casually asked her who was texting, she'd wave it off with, "Oh, just work stuff." Or, "Natalie's planning something big." And don't even get me started on the late night design consultations. Now, I'm not a jealous guy. Never have been. But even Baxter, our dog, started noticing the tension. He'd whimper every time Lisa rushed out the door without her usual ear rubs for him. One night, about a week after New Year's, I decided to stay up late working on a project for a client. Lisa had gone to bed early, or so she said. Around midnight, I heard her phone buzz from the couch. She'd left it there while sleeping, something she never does. And I swear, it was like the universe wanted me to look. I picked it up, fully intending to just turn it to silent and not invade her privacy. But the preview on the screen stopped me dead in my tracks. "Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last night was amazing." I froze. My hands started shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. My first thought? This has to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it's just some work joke. Or a friend messing around? But last night? She'd been with me, right? Except, she wasn't. She'd gone out late to grab party supplies for a friend. I hadn't questioned it then because I didn't want to seem controlling. But now the doubts were screaming in my head. I couldn't unlock her phone, but I didn't need to. The name attached to the message wasn't Natalie. It wasn't even anyone I recognized. Just Jason. Jason who? I sat there for hours, staring at the ceiling, the words burned into my brain. Who was Jason? And why was he calling my wife, babe? The next morning, I decided to test the waters. Over coffee, I asked Lisa about her night out for supplies. She barely looked up from her cup and gave me some vague answer about stopping by Natalie's house to pick up extra decorations. Natalie again. That's when it hit me, Lisa was lying. And I didn't know why, but I was going to find out. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After that coffee chat, I felt like I was living with a stranger. Lisa had always been good at conversation, engaging, bright, full of charm. But now, every word out of her mouth felt rehearsed, calculated, like she was keeping me at arm's length. I started noticing more cracks in her stories. Little things. She mentioned going to lunch with Natalie on Thursday, but when I casually asked Natalie about it during a group text about plans for the weekend, she said she'd been stuck in the office all day. I didn't call Lisa out on it, not yet. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation for the inconsistencies. But let me tell you, that hope was getting thinner by the day. Then there was the perfume. Lisa always had her signature scent, something floral and light that I'd bought her for Christmas years ago. But one night, when she came back from work drinks, she smelled different. It was spicy, musky. New perfume? I asked, keeping my tone casual. Oh, yeah, she replied, a little too quickly. One of my clients gave it to me as a thank you gift. You don't like it? It's nice, I lied. But my mind was already spinning. Then there was the strange phone call. It was a Saturday evening, and Lisa was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and without even thinking, I glanced at the screen. Jason was calling. My stomach dropped. I didn't answer it. I wasn't ready to blow this thing wide open yet. But I stood there, staring at her phone as it buzzed relentlessly. The call went to voicemail, and a few seconds later, a text popped up. Miss you already? Call me when you can. I should have gone straight to her, demanded answers. But something held me back. I needed more. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it. Maybe even twist it around on me. So, I started watching. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of Lisa's every move. Every late meeting was a new entry in the mental timeline I was building. Every quick glance at her phone during dinner sent my mind racing. Every time she left the house in full makeup for a coffee run, my chest tightened. And then, the first real clue. She forgot to log out of her email on the family laptop. I wasn't proud of myself for snooping, but at this point, I felt like I had no choice. I opened her inbox, heart pounding so loudly I could barely think. Most of it was standard stuff, work emails, newsletters she never read, reminders from our vet about Baxter's next checkup. But then I saw it. An email from Jason. The subject line: Our New Year's plans. I clicked on it, dreading what I might find. Inside was an exchange that made my blood run cold. He was thanking her for making the holiday unforgettable, followed by some inside joke about champagne and fireworks. Her reply was short but just as damning. Can't stop thinking about that night. Soon. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse racing. That was the moment when I knew something was horribly wrong. But I still didn't have all the pieces. And until I did, I wasn't going to let on that I was on to her. This wasn't just cracks in the foundation anymore. This was an earthquake, and I was bracing for the aftershocks. I decided it was time to get answers, real ones. If Lisa wasn't going to give them to me, I'd find them myself. And I had a plan. Once I decided to get real answers, I knew I had to tread carefully. Lisa was already on edge. Her behavior had shifted from dismissive to overly sweet, like she was trying to keep me from noticing something. I started by casually suggesting we spend more time together. Why don't we have a date night this week? I asked one evening. Her face lit up, but not in a good way. It was the kind of smile people wear when they're trying to cover something up. Oh, that sounds great. But I've got that big presentation for the Hendersons on Friday, remember? Maybe next week? I nodded, pretending to buy it, but I made a mental note. Friday night. While she was in the shower that night, I grabbed her phone. I know, bad move, invasion of privacy, all that. But desperate times, right? The messages between her and Jason were all deleted, which was suspicious in itself. But the calendar app was still synced to her work email. And there it was. Friday, 8 p.m., dinner with Jay Bottle with Hoppigork. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. I wanted to march into the bathroom, throw her phone at her, and demand answers right then and there. But I stopped myself. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted the truth, the full picture, with no way for her to wiggle out of it. So, I took a screenshot of the calendar entry and sent it to myself. The next day, I started digging into her social media. Lisa had always been an open book online, sharing pictures of her design projects, tagging me in cute posts about our life together. But recently, her updates had become less personal, more generic. Then I noticed something strange. On her Instagram, there were a few photos from New Year's Eve, a couple of our friends, some of the decorations we'd put up, but no pictures of us together. Why wouldn't she post those? We always took a picture at midnight, kissing with champagne in hand. It was a tradition. I scrolled back to previous New Year's posts, looking for the pattern. Every year before this one, there we were, smiling, laughing, the picture-perfect couple. But not this year. This year, it was like I didn't exist. And then I found it. A story I'd missed, archived in her highlights. It was a blurry video, taken sometime during the party. Lisa was in it, her arm around someone just out of frame. The caption read, "Cheers to new beginnings, clinking glasses. New beginnings." I replayed the clip over and over, trying to figure out who was standing next to her. The more I watched, the more certain I became that it wasn't one of our friends. My chest tightened as I thought about what this meant. She wasn't just lying to me, she was parading it in front of everyone, hiding it in plain sight. I knew I couldn't wait much longer. If I didn't act soon, I'd lose my chance to find out what was really going on. That Friday, while Lisa was getting ready for her presentation, I told her I had a work emergency and would be stuck at the office late. She barely looked up from her mirror as she told me, "Don't work too hard." I waited until she left the house before grabbing my coat and following her. It felt surreal, tailing my own wife through the streets of our town. She wasn't headed to the office, that much was clear. Instead, she drove to a restaurant on the other side of town, one I didn't even know she liked. I parked a block away and waited, heart pounding, as she got out of the car. She wasn't wearing the clothes she'd left the house in, she must have changed at work. She looked stunning, dressed to the nines in a way she hadn't for me in months. And then I saw him. Jason. Tall, well-dressed, every bit the charming stranger. He greeted her with a hug that lingered just a little too long, then led her inside the restaurant. I sat in my car, frozen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to storm in there, flip the table, and let them both have it. But I stayed put. I needed more than just seeing them together. I needed undeniable proof. So, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Sitting in my car that night, watching Lisa and Jason share a cozy dinner under the soft glow of the restaurant's lights, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was angry. Furious, even. But I knew I couldn't let my emotions run the show. If I barged in there, all I'd get was a denial, a scene, and maybe some pity from the other diners. No, I needed to be smart. If Lisa wanted to live a double life, I'd expose her in a way she couldn't deny or twist. The first step of my plan was information. I needed to understand everything. How long this had been going on, how deep it ran, and just how far she'd gone to keep it hidden. The second step? Timing. If I confronted her too soon, she'd find a way to spin it. But if I waited too long, I risked driving myself insane. I had to strike when the evidence was airtight. For the next week, I played the part of the clueless husband. I laughed at her jokes, helped her with chores, even brought her coffee in bed one morning just to keep up appearances. It was exhausting, but every fake smile brought me closer to the truth. Meanwhile, I started building my arsenal. I bought a small camera and set it up in the living room, hidden in plain sight as part of a shelf decoration. Lisa always took her phone calls in there, pacing back and forth while she whispered to whoever was on the other end. I figured if she was going to slip, it'd be during one of those late-night chats. I also installed tracking software on her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but at this point, pride was the least of my concerns. I set it up to notify me of her location and recover deleted texts. It wasn't long before the pieces started falling into place. One evening, I caught a snippet of a call while I was upstairs. Lisa thought I was taking a shower, but I'd left the water running as cover. "I can't wait to see you again," she said softly. "Last week was amazing." My fists clenched as I listened. She didn't say a name, but I didn't need to hear one. I checked the tracking app later that night. Sure enough, her location the previous Friday matched the restaurant where I'd followed her. The next morning, I reviewed the footage from the camera. Lisa was sitting on the couch, smiling at her phone. I couldn't see the screen, but her body language said it all. She was texting someone who made her giddy, someone who wasn't me. I wanted to scream, to throw the camera in her face and demand answers. But I held back. This was all part of the plan. The final piece was a setup, something that would leave her no room to deny what she was doing. I arranged for a close friend of mine, Derek, to invite me to a guys' weekend out of town. Lisa didn't know it, but Derek was in on the plan. While she thought I'd be 2 hours away, I'd be right here, watching everything unfold. I chose a Friday night, the same night Lisa always seemed to have late meetings. I packed a small bag, kissed her goodbye, and drove off, circling back to park a few streets away from our house. The waiting was excruciating. Hours passed, and I started to doubt myself. What if she didn't do anything that night? What if I was wrong, and all of this was just my imagination running wild? But then, just after 9 p.m., her car pulled out of the driveway. I followed her at a distance, heart pounding in my chest. She drove to the same restaurant as before, parked in the same spot, and walked inside. Jason was already there, holding a seat for her. This time, I didn't just record their dinner, I followed them afterward. They didn't head home. They didn't even go somewhere public. They went to a hotel. I stayed in my car seething, as they disappeared through the front doors. This was it. The proof I needed. But instead of confronting her there, I waited. I had something bigger in mind. Something that would force her to admit everything, in front of everyone who mattered. I was going to confront Lisa when she least expected it, with all the evidence laid out, no escape routes, no excuses. It wasn't just about finding out the truth anymore. It was about showing her that I'd caught her in her web of lies, every thread of it. And when the moment came, it'd be her turn to squirm. With every passing day, the weight of what I'd seen grew heavier. I wasn't sleeping much. I wasn't eating well. But what kept me going was the plan. If I played this right, Lisa wouldn't have a shred of doubt about how much I knew, and she'd have no way to gaslight me or twist the truth. The first step was compiling all the evidence into something airtight. I created a folder on my laptop and filled it with screenshots of her texts with Jason, the video footage from our living room, photos of her and Jason entering the restaurant and hotel, screenshots of the location tracking app that placed her at both spots multiple times. I even included a copy of our old New Year's Eve photos, the ones she hadn't bothered to post this year, just to drive the point home about how much things had changed. Once everything was organized, I reached out to Derek again. We'd been friends since college, and he was the kind of guy who always had my back. When I told him my plan, he didn't hesitate. "Say the word, man," Derek said. "I'll make sure it all goes down exactly how you want." The idea was simple but brutal. Lisa thought I was oblivious, that I didn't see the cracks forming all around her. So, I'd use that against her. I decided to confront her in the most public, undeniable way possible, at a dinner party with our closest friends. I told Derek to invite a small group of people, keeping the guest list tight. Just the folks Lisa and I spent the most time with, the ones who would have been shocked to find out something was wrong in our marriage. The date was set, Saturday night, 1 week from the hotel incident. I told Lisa I'd just gotten back from my guys' weekend, and that Derek had invited us over for a belated New Year's celebration. She bought it without hesitation. In the days leading up to the dinner, I kept everything as normal as I could. I went through the motions: work, chores, walking Baxter, while Lisa acted like nothing had changed. She was smiling more, oddly enough, like she thought she'd gotten away with something. It made my stomach turn. Finally, the night of the party arrived. We drove to Derek's house together, Lisa chatting about her day like it was any other Saturday. I could barely focus on her words, my mind racing with anticipation. When we arrived, the house was lit up, music playing softly in the background. Derek greeted us at the door, grinning like he always did, and ushered us inside. The usual crew was there, Natalie and her husband, a couple of mutual friends, and Derek's girlfriend, Jess. Everyone seemed relaxed, sipping drinks and catching up. Lisa slipped into social butterfly mode, laughing and chatting with the group as if she didn't have a care in the world. But I wasn't here to mingle. I waited until everyone had finished eating, the mood light and easy. Derek gave me a nod, our silent signal that it was time. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my face calm. "Hey everyone," I said, standing up and clinking my glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes on me. "I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all of you. This year's been interesting, to say the least. But you guys have been a constant. So, thank you." Lisa smiled at me, completely oblivious to what was coming next. "But," I continued, my tone shifting, "there's something I need to get off my chest tonight. Something I've been keeping to myself for a while now." The tension in the room was immediate. Lisa's smile faltered as she looked at me, her eyes narrowing in confusion. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small flash drive. "Derek, do you mind putting this on the TV?" "Sure thing," Derek said, already moving to set it up. "What's this about, Matt?" Lisa asked, her voice laced with nervous laughter. "You'll see," I replied, my gaze steady. As the screen lit up, the first thing that appeared was a video, the footage from our living room. Lisa's face paled as she saw herself on the couch, laughing at her phone. The room went dead silent. The video played for a few seconds, showing Lisa lounging on the couch, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She was smiling, giggling softly at whatever she was reading. I could hear the faint click of her nails on the screen as she typed a reply. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were glued to the screen, and Lisa's smile was nowhere to be found. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I let the video speak for itself. It cut to the next clip, the parking lot of the restaurant. Grainy footage of Lisa stepping out of her car, her outfit unmistakably the one I'd seen her wearing the night I followed her. She looked nervous, glancing around before walking toward the entrance. Then, Jason appeared on screen. The room collectively gasped. Natalie, sitting closest to the screen, actually dropped her wine glass, the red liquid splattering across the floor like a visual representation of the chaos unraveling before everyone's eyes. "Oh my God!" Natalie whispered. The video transitioned to the restaurant interior. I'd recorded through the window, zooming in as Lisa and Jason shared a cozy meal. They laughed, leaned in close, and Jason reached across the table to brush a strand of hair from her face. Lisa stood up abruptly. "Matt, what the hell is this?" "This," I said, my voice calm but ice cold, "is the truth. Something you seem to have forgotten how to tell." Everyone turned to Lisa. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "I'm not done," I said, raising my hand. "Derek, next file." The screen changed again. This time, it was the hotel. Lisa and Jason walking through the front doors, hand in hand. The timestamp was glaring at the bottom corner, the same night she told me she was working late. Natalie shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. "You've been lying to all of us," she shouted at Lisa. "You said you were dealing with work stress. What the hell is this?" Lisa's face turned beet red, her eyes darting around the room for an escape. "This isn't what it looks like," she stammered, her voice shaking. "Oh, really?" I said, raising my eyebrows. "Then what is it, Lisa? Because it sure looks like you've been sneaking around with Jason while lying to your husband and everyone in this room." Jason wasn't just a random guy. He was Natalie's brother. The room erupted as everyone pieced it together, voices overlapping in a chaotic storm. "I trusted you, Lisa!" Natalie yelled, tears streaming down her face. "You've been sneaking around with my brother this whole time?" But it wasn't over. Oh no, I had saved the best, or worst, depending on your perspective, for last. "Derek," I said quietly, "play the final file." This one wasn't a video. It was audio, recorded from one of Lisa's late-night calls in our living room. "He has no idea," Lisa's voice said, her tone smug and conspiratorial. "Matt's so clueless. It's almost pathetic. He actually thinks I'm working late." Jason's voice crackled through the speakers next. "We should just tell him, babe. Get it over with. I'm tired of sneaking around." "Not yet," Lisa replied. "Once I'm sure I'll come out on top, we'll tell him. I'm not losing my safety net until I know you're serious." My stomach churned at the words, but the room's reaction was immediate. Natalie stormed toward Lisa, her face a mask of fury. "You used my brother as some kind of backup plan? Are you kidding me?" Lisa backed away, her hands raised defensively. "It's not like that," she shouted, her voice cracking. "Then explain it," I said, stepping closer. "Explain it to everyone here, Lisa. Why don't you tell them how long you've been lying to all of us? Or how you've been using Jason as your plan B?" Lisa's lip trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might actually try to justify herself. But instead she broke. She crumpled to the floor, sobbing into her hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she cried. I was lonely, okay? You were always so busy, Matt, and Jason, he was there. I didn't know how to stop." "Save it," I said, my voice like steel. "You made your choices, Lisa. And now, everyone knows exactly who you are." The room was chaos, Natalie yelling, Derek trying to calm her down, and Lisa sobbing on the floor. I stood there, watching the life we'd built unravel in front of me. But instead of feeling broken, I felt free. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The room was a cacophony of voices, Natalie shouting at Lisa, chairs scraping against the floor as people shifted uncomfortably, and Lisa's choked sobs blending into the chaos. I stood rooted in place, letting the storm swirl around me. This wasn't over. Not yet. "Matt," Lisa finally managed, looking up at me from the floor, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Please. Can we just talk? Privately? Privately?" Natalie snapped, cutting her off. "Oh, now you want privacy? You didn't care about privacy when you were sneaking around with my brother. When you were lying to your husband, to all of us." Lisa flinched, but I raised a hand to calm Natalie. "No," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We're not doing this in private, Lisa. You had plenty of chances to come clean. This is where it ends." She stared at me, wide-eyed and trembling. For a second, I thought she might try to bolt for the door. But before she could say anything, Natalie turned her fury toward me. "And you, Matt," she said, her voice rising. "You've known about this, haven't you? You've been sitting on all this evidence, watching her lie to everyone, and you just waited? What kind of game were you playing?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on me now. "It wasn't a game," I said, my voice calm but tight. "I wasn't going to confront her until I knew I had the truth, the whole truth. If I'd said something too soon, she'd have lied her way out of it. She's good at that." I shot Lisa a pointed look, and she wilted under my gaze. "You're no saint, Matt," Natalie spat. "You let this drag on and hurt everyone in the process. Me, my brother. Did you even think about how this would blow up in our faces?" Before I could respond, the front door slammed open, and in walked Jason himself, completely unaware of the firestorm he was walking into. "Hey, Lisa," he called, his voice cheerful as he shrugged off his jacket. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was—" He stopped mid-sentence, his smile vanishing as he took in the scene. His eyes darted between Lisa on the floor, Natalie's furious glare, and the flash drive still plugged into the TV. "What the hell is this?" Jason asked, his tone shifting from confusion to anger. Lisa scrambled to her feet, her voice desperate. "Jason, I didn't know you were coming. You weren't supposed to." "Weren't supposed to what?" Jason snapped, his voice rising. "Weren't supposed to see this circus you've created? Or were you planning to drag me down with you?" Natalie stepped forward, her finger jabbing at Jason's chest. "You," she hissed, "are just as bad as she is. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? To Matt?" Jason looked from Natalie to me, then back to Lisa, his face contorted in frustration. "I don't need this," he muttered, throwing up his hands. "I didn't sign up for a public execution." "Really?" I said, my voice sharp. "You didn't sign up for this? What about sneaking around with my wife? What about lying to your sister? Did you think this wouldn't blow up eventually?" Jason took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. "Look, man, I get that you're mad, but don't put this all on me. If your marriage was so perfect, Lisa wouldn't have." That was it. I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw before I even realized I'd swung. Jason stumbled back, crashing into the coffee table as everyone gasped. "Matt!" Lisa screamed, rushing to Jason's side. "Don't you dare!" I snapped at her, my voice trembling with rage. "Don't you dare try to defend him after everything you've done!" Jason scrambled to his feet, rubbing his jaw, his eyes blazing with fury. "You're insane," he growled. "And you're a coward," I shot back. "A coward who thought he could play house with another man's wife and get away with it." The room was spinning out of control. Natalie stepped between us, her voice shaking with anger. "Both of you, stop! This isn't solving anything!" But it didn't stop there. Lisa, still crouched next to Jason, finally snapped. "You think you're so perfect, Matt? You're not! You've been distant for months, working late, ignoring me. What was I supposed to do? Sit at home and feel invisible? Invisible?" I barked, laughing bitterly. "You didn't feel invisible when I planned our anniversary trip. Or when I worked overtime to pay off your design studio's debts. But sure, Lisa, tell yourself whatever you need to justify what you've done." Her face twisted with guilt and anger, but before she could respond, Jason cut in. "You know what? Screw this. I'm out." He stormed toward the door, but not before Natalie blocked his path. "You're not going anywhere, Jason," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Not until you've explained yourself. To me, to Matt, to everyone you've betrayed." Jason froze, the tension thick in the air. The truth was out, but the damage was just beginning. Jason stood there, frozen, his face a mixture of anger and discomfort as Natalie blocked the door. "I don't owe anyone here an explanation," he muttered, his voice low but defiant. Natalie wasn't having it. "No, Jason, you do. You owe me, Matt, and every single person in this room the truth. Or are you just going to run away like the spineless idiot I've been warning everyone you are?" Jason's jaw clenched. "Fine. You want the truth? Here it is." The room went silent again, all eyes on him. He looked straight at me, then Lisa, before speaking. "It wasn't just some fling. Lisa and I, we're in love." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My vision blurred, the room swaying for a moment. The audacity of it, the sheer gall to stand there and say that in front of everyone, was almost too much to process. Lisa gasped, clearly not expecting him to be so bold. "Jason!" she hissed, grabbing his arm. But Jason shrugged her off, his face hard. "What?" "He deserves to know. Everyone does." He turned back to me. "Yeah, Matt, we've been seeing each other for a while. And yeah, I knew it was wrong. But you weren't there for her. She needed someone, and you were too busy playing the perfect husband to notice she was miserable. You think that justifies what you did?" I asked, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. "You think sneaking around and lying to everyone makes you a hero?" "I didn't say I was a hero," Jason shot back. But at least I was honest with her. Something you apparently haven't been in a long time. That was it. The room erupted into chaos again. Natalie started shouting at Jason, Derek tried to calm her down, and Lisa just stood there, her face pale and tear-streaked. You're delusional. Natalie spat at Jason. You don't love her. You just wanted to play the knight in shining armor for someone else's wife. And now look at the mess you've made. Lisa finally found her voice, her words shaky but defensive. This isn't all Jason's fault. Matt, you checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I tried to tell you how I was feeling, but you never listened. I didn't listen? I snapped. Every time you said you needed something, I'd bend over backward to give it to you. A bigger house, your studio, that ridiculous anniversary party you wanted last year. I gave you everything. But I guess it wasn't enough, was it? She flinched but didn't back down. You gave me things, Matt, not time. Not attention. You were so busy trying to be a provider that you forgot how to be a husband. The room was spinning out of control, emotions running high and unchecked. And then Jason made his final mistake. You know what? He said, stepping forward. Maybe Lisa and I are better off without all of you meddling. She doesn't need your judgment. She needs someone who actually sees her for who she is. Before anyone could respond, Natalie lost it. You selfish bastard! She screamed, slapping Jason across the face with enough force to echo through the room. The shock of it froze everyone in place. Jason stumbled back, clutching his cheek, his expression morphing from anger to disbelief. That's for lying to me, Natalie said, her voice trembling with rage. For lying to Matt. For ruining everything you touch. Jason turned to Lisa, his eyes wide, as if silently pleading for her to defend him. But Lisa didn't move. She just stood there, her face crumbling as the reality of what she'd done hit her like a freight train. Jason, she said, her voice barely audible. You need to leave. What? Jason looked stunned. Lisa swallowed hard, tears streaming down her face. You need to go. I can't do this. Not like this. Jason looked around the room, his confidence finally faltering. You're choosing him? He asked, gesturing to me. I'm not choosing anyone, Lisa cried, her voice breaking. I need time to think. Please just go. Jason hesitated for a moment, his jaw tightening. Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out the door, slamming it behind him. The room was eerily quiet now, save for Lisa's quiet sobs. Natalie turned to her, her voice icy. I hope it was worth it, Lisa. I really do. Then she grabbed her coat and left too, followed by Derek and the others, leaving just Lisa and me standing there in the wreckage of everything we built. Lisa finally looked at me, her face a mask of guilt and desperation. Matt, she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. Don't, I said, my voice cold and detached. Not tonight. Not after this. And without waiting for a response, I walked out the door, leaving her to face the mess she'd created alone. I drove aimlessly for hours that night, the adrenaline from the confrontation still pulsing through my veins. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the occasional ding of my phone, messages from Derek and Natalie checking in, no doubt. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. By the time I got back home, the house was dark. Lisa's car was still parked in the driveway, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I sat in the car, staring at the front door, my mind replaying the events of the evening like a broken record. The image of Lisa's tear-streaked face haunted me. Part of me wanted to storm inside, demand answers to the questions I hadn't asked yet. How long had this been going on? How could she justify throwing everything away for a guy like Jason? But another part of me, the exhausted, shattered part, just wanted to sleep. To shut it all out, even if only for a little while. Eventually, I went inside. The house felt eerily quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. Baxter wagged his tail half-heartedly when he saw me, sensing something was wrong. Lisa was sitting in the living room, curled up on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes red and swollen. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence hung heavy between us, thick with unspoken words. "Matt," she started, her voice hoarse. I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Not tonight," I said, my tone flat. She opened her mouth to argue, but I turned and headed upstairs, not giving her a chance. The next morning. I barely slept that night. When I finally dragged myself out of bed, the sunlight streaming through the curtains felt almost mocking. Lisa was still downstairs, sitting at the dining table with a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Can we talk now?" she asked softly as I entered the kitchen. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the silence between us stretching like a taut rubber band. Finally, I sat down across from her. "Start from the beginning," I said, my voice low. "How long has this been going on?" Lisa hesitated, her hands trembling as she held her mug. "A few months," she admitted. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean for it to turn into this." I let out a bitter laugh. "That's what everyone says, isn't it? It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did, Lisa. So tell me. Why? Why, Jason? Why now?" She looked down, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "I was lonely, Matt," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You were always working late, always distracted. I felt invisible. And Jason, he made me feel seen again." I clenched my jaw, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "So, instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix what was wrong, you decided to blow up our marriage? With Jason, of all people?" She flinched but didn't deny it. "I tried to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "But every time, you just brushed it off. You said you were doing everything for us, but it felt like I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. Don't put this all on me," I snapped, my voice rising. "I wasn't perfect, Lisa, but I didn't betray you. I didn't lie to you, sneak around behind your back, and destroy the life we built together." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might try to argue. But instead she broke down, sobbing into her hands. "I don't know how to fix this," she said between sobs. "I don't even know if I can." I stared at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and felt nothing but a hollow ache. "I don't think you can," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "Matt, please," she said, looking up at me with desperation in her eyes. "Please don't give up on us." I shook my head. "You gave up on us the moment you let him into your life. I'm not the one who walked away, Lisa. You did." And with that I walked out the door, leaving her alone with the ruins of what she'd destroyed. The fallout from that night didn't stop at our doorstep. Natalie called me later that day, her voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "I can't believe this," she said. "Jason's been calling me nonstop, trying to justify what he did. He's blaming Lisa, saying she manipulated him." I scoffed. "Of course he is. That's what cowards do. What are you going to do?" she asked. I didn't have an answer for her. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was gone, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. But one thing was certain, Lisa and I couldn't stay under the same roof. Not anymore. Days turned into weeks, and life became a blur of silence and routine. Lisa and I barely spoke. I slept in the guest room while she stayed in the master bedroom. Our conversations, when they happened, were curt and transactional, about bills, Baxter, or who was making dinner. I told myself I was done, that there was no going back. But no matter how much I tried to hate her, I couldn't erase the years we'd spent together. The memories of late-night drives, lazy Sundays, and the way she used to light up when I walked into the room, they lingered, refusing to let me move on. I started seeing a therapist, mostly to process the anger and betrayal. During one session, my therapist said something that stuck with me. "Forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did, Matt. It's about deciding if there's something left to rebuild. If you can't see a future with her, that's okay. But if you can, it'll take both of you being honest, brutally honest, about what went wrong and what needs to change. That night, I sat in the living room with a drink in my hand, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. Lisa and I looked so happy in that picture, so full of hope for the future. I didn't sleep much. But by morning, I knew I couldn't keep living like this, stuck in limbo, holding on to the past while avoiding the present. Lisa was in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee, when I walked in. She looked up, surprised to see me. "We need to talk," I said, sitting down across from her. She nodded silently, setting her mug down. "I've been thinking a lot," I started, my voice steady but heavy. "About us, about what happened, and about what I want moving forward." She swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting on the table. "And? I'm not going to pretend I'm over it," I said. "What you did hurt me more than I can put into words. But I also know I wasn't the husband I should have been. I let work consume me, and I stopped paying attention to the things that mattered to you." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't interrupt. "I don't excuse what you did," I continued. "It was wrong. But I'm willing to try to understand why it happened, if you're willing to be honest with me. No more lies. No more excuses." She broke down, her shoulders shaking as tears streamed down her face. "Matt, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll do whatever it takes to earn it. I'll go to therapy, counseling, anything. I don't want to lose you." For the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of the woman I fell in love with. The one who made mistakes but was willing to fight for what mattered. "I can't promise this will work," I said honestly. "But if we're going to try, we both have to be all in. No holding back, no hiding." She nodded, her face a mix of relief and guilt. "I'm all in," she said softly. The first step was therapy. We started seeing a marriage counselor together, digging into the root of our issues. It wasn't easy. There were sessions where I stormed out, unable to handle the weight of her confessions or my own failings. There were nights where she cried herself to sleep, and I stayed awake, wondering if I'd made the right choice. But slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. Lisa gave up her job temporarily, focusing on repairing our relationship and being more present. I cut back on work hours, making time for date nights and long conversations. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, still scars from the betrayal. But for the first time in months, I started to feel hope again. The turning point. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching Baxter play in the yard, Lisa reached for my hand. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" I asked, turning to her. "For giving me another chance. For believing we could fix this, even when I didn't believe it myself." I squeezed her hand, a small smile tugging at my lips. "I'm not doing this for you, Lisa. I'm doing it for us. Because I still believe in what we had, even if it's not the same anymore." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could make it. The road ahead wasn't easy, but it was ours. And for the first time, we were walking it together. Not as the people we used to be, but as the people we were becoming, scarred, humbled, but stronger than before. Lisa's betrayal had broken something in me, but it also forced me to confront my own failings. And while the scars would never fully fade, they became a reminder of what we'd survived, and what we were willing to fight for.